Good morning and welcome to Houston Techfest 2020 virtual edition. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone knows about the Q&A feature. There is a question mark icon in the upper right-hand corner of the presentation screen. Y'all feel free to post anytime. Moderator will handle your questions, and William will take an opportunity halfway through and at the end of the presentation to answer them. Code Magazine is giving away a free subscription. Sign up with the link in the Q&A. And without any further ado, we are proud to present William Massif at SparkHound, who will be telling us about certification exams inside out. Take it away.
Good morning, and thank you, Walton. Just want to start by saying that I hope everyone is safe and healthy and is doing everything they can do to stay that way, including staying at home in your pajamas, watching Houston Tech Fest. Very safe activity today. I hope you're all taking all the appropriate precautions, even if your local government isn't insisting you do so, because that's the way you're going to stay safe and healthy. If you've become unemployed recently because of the pandemic, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. My wife and I would be happy to share time and resources with you in your job search. She has a lot of experience in this area. She's also speaking at this conference 4 times. So she's a wealth of information from that stuff, including one on resumes. We'd be happy to spend some time on resume review or interview coaching. We're happy to help. Today's presentation is delivered with a short delay from the broadcast medium. So like Walton said, if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them anytime. We're going to save time to answer collected questions in the middle of our presentation and then again at the very end. So, pop quiz. You are a member of the Council of Elrond. You must choose someone present to bring the One Ring to Mordor. One does not simply walk into Mordor. The ring bearer must not be desirous to use the ring to help their own kingdom. The ring bearer must not own another of the rings of power. You need to choose a ring bearer. Which do you choose? We're not exactly interactive today, but the correct answer, and we're going to break down this question, how to rule things out, how the question is structured throughout this presentation, and then come back to it. But obviously the correct answer is Frodo Baggins. There's no one else. We'll explain why later. So a summary of today's presentation, we're going to talk about who exams are for. We're going to talk about the new role-based Microsoft certification exams and certifications, how exams are written, test-taking tips, deconstructing wrong answers, and then some sample exercises, just like that one. And though we are going to talk a little bit about Microsoft exams in the middle, this is really not specific to Microsoft technologies or exams. And though I am a SQL Server DBA, we're not really going to talk about SQL Server today. It is also, that's where my experience lies as a consultant in the Microsoft platform, both as a certified professional and a consultant and as an exam writer for Microsoft certification exams since 2012. So here's a little notes and statistics from both Microsoft and CompTIA talking about employees who are certified being more productive, responding better, having better careers, being respected by employers. Does a certification exam make you a better database administrator or developer per se? No, I'm not implying causation here. But the process of preparing for the exam, the preparation of the materials, the mindset that led you on the self-improvement path of certification exams, those are all productive, causative, and beneficial to your career. So good for you for attending this session in your pajamas on a Saturday morning and probably feeling the need to get certified. As a final note, I'll say that becoming certified makes your skill set broader, more aware of features, and potentially better at choosing the right solutions for new problems in the future. So, what do exams try to test? When deciding on exam content, subject matter experts, or SMEs, like myself, are brought into Microsoft and asked, is this part of the skill set that you do regularly? Or is this a skill set you would look for when hiring? If a group of worldwide SMEs does not think a feature is important, it doesn't go on the exam. However, new features for new versions are likely to be included on the exam to certify people who are working on the newest versions. So some guidance for employers in the room. Microsoft exams are designed to test experience, not book knowledge. So asking a kid at a college or an entry-level employee to take a certification exam, and we'll talk about some that are actually meant for kids out of college and entry-level employees, but I'm talking about certification exams on their way to the major certifications. That's not something I advise. It leads to one of three outcomes. The first is that they pass the exam somehow, and that is the least likely of outcomes. More likely, they will fail the exam, possibly multiple times, resulting in frustration or disillusionment, maybe even career derailment, and nobody wants that. The third option is they try to cheat, and the outcomes there are dubious, pass or fail. So that's why I say that exams are designed to test experience, and they should be taken by experienced professionals. Exams target people with at least 2 years, some more than 5. MCSE track exams, and we're going to talk about how MCSE is going away very soon, are for 5 years of experience. Don't have unrealistic expectations at entry level for yourself or for your employees. And put cash bounties on exams. That's fine, but with no time limit. Reward success in certification exams, but not to excess, and career progress should still occur outside of exams. As an employer, you should pay the exam fees, even if they fail every time they take it, and incentivize taking exams for the right reasons. So let's talk about training. Classroom training is lengthy, hit and miss. If you're in consulting like I am, then classroom training is a double whammy. You're losing the billable hours as well as the cost of the training. Travel conferences are expensive and lengthy. And now that said, I highly recommend for data platform folks, the all virtual PASS Summit, which is the Professional Association for SQL Server Summit, happening in November. So if you're a DBA or an analyst or machine learning person or anything like that, it was actually supposed to happen in Houston this year physically, but unfortunately it was canceled along with everything else. So now it's quite inexpensive. It's the same high quality content. Anyway, some tips on travel conferences for your employees. Require knowledge transfer afterwards. It makes the notes the attendee of the conference takes a little more detail oriented, if you know what I mean, if they know they're going to have to present on what they've learned. And another tip, require proof of hands-on lab completion when sending your employees off to a big conference. A lot of big conferences have a lab area where you can sit down and do guided walkthroughs. I know a lot of the big Microsoft conferences do. Obviously, that's not a feature now with all these conferences being virtual, but in the future. Instead, I advise self-paced learning and lab resources. Give your employees the resources they need, whether that's in Azure or a physical lab or machines like laptops that are good enough to run the software or to run whatever environment the people are supposed to be learning. Those resources should probably include Azure credits for self-paced learning or AWS or Google Cloud or whatever it is, whatever cloud you're in. Employees should also take advantage of free, easy training opportunities to earn expensive paid training opportunities. So for example, free, easy training opportunities like this event right now. So give yourself a pat on the back. So first off, what have they done with my MCSD, MCSE, MCSA? If it starts with a 70 or a number really, the exam is almost certainly already retired or will be retired in January of 2021. That deadline was actually moved back 6 months because of COVID. It should have been retired over the summer. This includes all exams associated with the MCSA, MCSD, and MCSE certifications for Microsoft, though certifications themselves will remain on your official transcript until no later than June 2022. Over the past few years, exams starting with letters like AZ or DP or AI, for example, are the newer exams you're looking for. Those older exams that we've had were technology or platform based. Now, Microsoft exams are role based. So there will not be a Microsoft certification exam for Windows Server 2019 or SQL Server 2019 because those certification exams would be product based. Instead, there will be exams focusing on roles like solutions architect, enterprise administrator, Azure data engineer, Azure developer, or functional consultant. We'll talk about that one later. These roles are expected to have broad experience with all the relevant features and products. So, but right now, with all of this happening, how would you take an exam? Apparently, there are some exam testing centers that are open. You got to wear masks and do the social distancing thing, and you got to go out in the world. You got to get out from underneath the covers, and that's very scary. I understand. I'm not going to talk about them tonight because there's lots of different types of exams that Microsoft offers, but they're all offered via Pearson VUE. Thankfully, Pearson VUE and Microsoft had been offering online proctor's exams for people in remote areas already. Now they're expanding this offering and they're expanding the slots that are available for it because many testing centers have closed and it's just safer. So it's a live proctored exam, which means you are taking an exam at your home or your office with your computer and your webcam with someone actively watching via your webcam and listening to you via your computer's microphone. In fact, this whole process is easiest if you're using an exam, if you're taking the exam on a laptop with a built-in webcam and mic. They work for the most part fine, technically, though they are unforgiving. I have taken 3 online exams since the pandemic started. Each time I took the exam, new security requirements were added that became stricter as they were looking for more things. You have to take pictures of your testing area from all angles, left and right, top and bottom, floor and ceiling, back and front, your ears, your glasses. You have to cover any screens around you. You have to erase any whiteboards, close any window blinds. This remote inspection process may take up to half an hour. So make sure to log into your exam early to give yourself plenty of time to go through their security checkpoint, essentially, and use the same browser window throughout. I recommend Chrome. There are stories out there of people walking through the room behind you while you're taking the exam, or a distant voice being heard, or a toddler walking up and asking for a glass of juice, and boom, the remote monitor cancels your session, fails your exam with no refund. You are warned of this ahead of time pretty clearly. So make sure you're taking your online proctored exam in a place where no one can be seen or heard, including your kids. I put a sock on my home office door and I told my wife and my college kid who's stuck at home now not to make any noise or enter the room for a couple hours. That's what's necessary. Honestly, it worked pretty well for me, though my boss had issues with his browser and lost his exam slot and had to fight for a refund. Even after the pandemic passes, I still might consider online proctored exams just because it saves the hassle and the travel. It worked well. I'm 3 for 3. So what's back to certification exams? Enough about Microsoft. So what's on a certification exam? This is straight from Microsoft or straight from whatever place you're taking the exam. This is the skills measured section of an exam's website. This is called the domain. The domain of an exam is determined by a group of subject matter experts before item writing begins, validated by that real life experience I talked about. The domain tells the item writer what to write about and tells you what to prep for, so there'll be no surprises. How to prepare. Study by doing. Review the domain, of course. If there's unfamiliar features or if you have questions about how something works, what I always tell my employees, lab it out. The training content on the Azure topics in the Microsoft website is actually pretty good. There's a lot of free training out there. Microsoft provides free in-browser sandboxes where for free you have access to Azure for like 4 hours to do whatever it is you're learning about. A lot of other training platforms have the same thing. YouTube is a wealth of information. There's a lot of stuff in the community out there for free before you go paying for a paid training class or practice test. This is just an example in AZ900, the Azure Fundamentals exam for Microsoft, but there are hours of free video training to review quizzes on the website. These free materials aren't available for all exams yet, but the use of that free built-in browser sandbox is expanding. So again, study by doing. The lab environment that you have for whatever technology that you're in at home or work is important to your learning so that you can build and break and fix and learn. This is how I have learned a lot of stuff. If you don't have a test lab, build one. That is very educational itself. Invest significant time in your career, not just in school, not just in student loans, but in your own internal lab environment. If you're a web developer, in your own websites. Have a lab environment installed on your work or home PC, or just use Azure or AWS or Google Cloud. Do not study only by reading books and online. I mean, who studies by reading books? Who even writes books anymore? I've written a couple books for Microsoft. I wouldn't recommend it. Memorization is rarely tested. Though you have to know the subject material, it'll be a factor in the questions. Proper feature choice is much more likely to be tested. For example, code sample questions are likely to test dependency or tactic, not syntax. They're not going to throw semicolons in there on a certification exam to test you on your semicolon knowledge. Exam questions are supposed to be highly situational. So instead of asking, what's the difference between X and Y? The question will be, you are doing something with these conditions and these variables. What should you choose? Also, exams are not just multiple choice questions. Other types, such as case study questions, which have a whole bunch of text and then a whole bunch of questions for that text, or build lists where you have to put things in the right order, or drag and drops where you're essentially filling in the blank with pre-selected options. They all operate on the same rules and challenges for the writers. But in the end, the challenge remains to create a right path and then a bunch of incorrect distractors. And that's when you're writing an exam, that's what a wrong answer is called, a distractor. We'll talk more about that later. So this is more from the aspect of the item writers. Real answer options have to be 100% correct. The distractors must be plausible, but 100% wrong. And we can't make stuff up. Every answer you see is something real. We write plausible, real, wrong answers. So for example, in SQL Server, which is the technology that I do, and that's okay if you don't, there's no such thing as the checksum recovery model, even though checksum's a thing and the recovery model, that's a thing too. So you won't see checksum recovery model as a choice on the exam. Emphasis is on broad solution skill sets for major certs. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we have role-based certifications now. There's no such thing as a one-dimensional certification because there are a few cases of one-dimensional jobs. This is intentional. It raises the value of a certification. And so Microsoft and others subcontract out subject matter experts globally for various phases of question development. Topics are removed from the domain if none of the subject matters present could say they use it in real life. Subject matter experts are asked questions about the value of different technical topics. Then they're asked how many questions on each subject area should there be in the domain. Then item writers are given assignments to cover a narrow domain of the exam. Go write an item about recovery model. Item writer team must make sure they're not overlapping or creating nemesis that give away answers to other questions. A nemesis question is a question that the question text of it gives away the answer to another question. That's okay to write both of those. They can just be programmatically never assigned to the same exam session. Then there's a review process and an alpha process that occur with yet another group of different subject matter experts to fine-tune the items. And then there's a public beta process where you can actually take the beta exam for not for free, but for real cheap before the exam is live. Later, we'll talk about domain drift, where it's a real problem for exam writers, for item writers with complex questions. We'll give an example of that too. Let's talk about some of the grammar that item writers have to go through. We have to say things like you should use, not could or would. You need to, not must. By using, not using. Named, not called, because called is a technical thing, like you call a function. So things have to be named. A server can't be called something. Server has to be named something. You are developing, not you are working on. You have to be specific with the verb. By using the least amount of administrative effort. Not most efficiently or best, or just, of course you do it this way, but you have to put this whole line out by using the least amount of administrative effort. We'll talk about that. A server that runs SQL Server, seriously, not running SQL or just SQL Server, a server that runs SQL Server. This is why the exam questions get overly wordy. Also, if the word or phrase doesn't translate well, we can't use it. And that's the reason behind a lot of these things. The word only is a pain. it must be exact. Think again of the translation. So for example, tonight we are serving enchiladas only. That's it for the menu. Nothing else on the menu. Tonight we only are serving enchiladas. Nobody else makes enchiladas. Or tonight only, we are only serving enchiladas. Tomorrow, no enchiladas. Think about this. The application only connects to one database. Doesn't do anything else but connect. Versus the application connects to only one database. It connects to only one database, and that's more likely the intention of what you were trying to write and then have translated, of course. So some best practices, let's talk about that. Never on an exam talk about best practices, and never assume a question is asking you for a best practice. Something in the question will make the other answers wrong. Best practices are not testable. They may be used, though, as distractors. So we can't test unenforced naming conventions or file extensions. In SQL Server, most of the file extensions are best practice only. They're not enforced. You can have no file extension or any file extension in almost any file in SQL Server, for example. A lot of languages and systems are like that really don't care about the file extension. We can't test generally accepted standards or the normal order for this, or even the documented order for this. It has to be the exact right or wrong order for this. You can't test how it's always been done. You can't test industry knowledge. Talk about beta exams for a little bit. So for example, 300 registration codes were made available for AZ303, a developer's exam, on a first come, first served basis. With beta exams, though, the only catch is you don't find out whether or not you've passed right away. At the end of the exam, you just get a thank you. They evaluate the outcomes. For example, I took the DP300 and then the DP900 beta exams back in May or June, and I found out in August that I had passed. So that's the only catch with beta exams. Otherwise, they're super cheap to take on a new technology or new platform. Might be a cheap and easy way to get yourself some, one, exposure to that technology, and two, maybe a cert exam right off the bat. So after the exam is live, in the beta process, and after it goes through the beta process and the exam is live, question and success feedback is analyzed by someone called a psychometrician. That's a pretty cool job title, you got to admit. At Microsoft, her name is Liberty Munson. She's a pretty cool character with a neat job and an even better job title. For example, she looks at things like, do candidates who pass this question, do candidates who pass the exam get this question right? If so, good. Do candidates who pass the exam get this question wrong? Not good. Not a good question then. Is question success unrelated to exam success? That just means people are guessing. So exams can be refreshed with new or better content to get rid of a question that's not performing very well, for example, without changing the exam number, or to add new content that's been introduced. In cloud stuff, we all know that new features are being added almost weekly. Also, your comments on the exams are reviewed by name. So be professional. I've been part of some of those sessions before. Your comments can contribute to changing or abandoning a question. For example, if you say, why are you testing this? I'd look this up. That kind of comments gets attention. But again, your name's attached to your comments. Please be professional. Not everybody's gotten that message. Okay, moving on. So writing the wrong answers. This is again talking about the item writer's experience. Writing the wrong answers is most difficult. If two answers seem correct on the exam, there is a differentiator somewhere in the question, I promise. Read the question carefully. Note details. Note weird details. At some point, the question writer introduced a factor into the question to make sure there is only one right answer and the other options are 100% wrong. Can't be 75% wrong. Can't be testing best practices. All the wrong answers have to be 100% wrong. That's why wrong answers actually are more difficult to write. Writing the right answer is easy. Its opposite is easy, although sometimes it's a little too obvious. Creating challenging wrong answers sometimes involves introducing new variables or twists to your question. It's difficult to keep the question scenario simple while still being complex enough to have 3 legitimate wrong answers. Domain drift is what happens when your question became so complicated, you had to complicate it to make 300% wrong answers, that you ended up with a question on a different topic. Now you have to go to the writing team and beg another writer who got assigned a question in that category to trade question assignments with you, and that's okay. For example, you were supposed to ask a question about peanut butter sandwiches, and you ended up asking a question, writing a question, a complex question about whether utensils can spread creamy peanut butter. Stay with me. So a question will include a technical scenario, a problem statement and requirements, a goal statement, and a question statement. You will see this in every question. So for example, you are making a sandwich. You must make the sandwich with peanut butter. You need to choose a utensil. Which do you choose? So your easy multiple choice answers become a fork, a spoon, a knife, and a spork. And everyone knows a knife is correct. That's the industry standard question, right? You could probably spread peanut butter with any of those utensils if you try hard enough. And you cannot test best practices or industry standards for peanut butter distribution. So you change your goal statement. You are making a sandwich. You must make the sandwich with peanut butter. You need to choose a utensil that will spread the peanut butter by using the least amount of administrative effort. Which do you choose? But says who? Sporks and spoons have virtually the same peanut butter delivery factors. And it could be argued by some cultures that forks are the superior peanut butter handling instruments. So you complicate your question to test the exam taker's peanut butter solutions delivery experience. You are making a sandwich. You must make the sandwich with peanut butter and cut the sandwich in half using the same utensil. Which do you choose? Well, that's an odd detail to add in there, right? If you see something like that pop up on a real exam question, you know they're intentionally making something wrong. Now, spoons are definitely out. You cannot cut bread with a spoon. That's science. But sporks and forks, those could still get the job done, you know, as well as the correct answer, knife. But spork and fork are not 100% wrong yet. So you change your question again. You're making a sandwich. You must make the sandwich with peanut butter and cut the sandwich in half using the same utensil. You do not have access to a hybrid utensil environment. Which do you choose? Boom. Now, sporks are clearly not allowed for no good real life reason. By the way, only a reason made up for this question. So pay attention for those kind of things in the question. And now the spork answer is 100% wrong, but forks remain a problem. Ah-ha-ha-ha. We change it to creamy peanut butter, and there's no way you could spread creamy peanut butter with a fork. Ta-da! And that's why certification exam questions take forever to read. Note all the little details that may seem extraneous at first. This isn't a question about sandwiches. This is really a question, isn't really a question about peanut butter either. It's a question about solution selection, and in that case, it's quite realistic. So now you understand why writing exam questions about simple concepts are difficult. And exam questions sometimes feel weighted down by different variables and factors. It's why creating a huge case study type question with several pages of information as the source of several questions actually works out pretty well. So what did we start writing a question about? Utensils. What did we end up writing a question about? Bread geometry and peanut butter viscosity. Okay, so before we go to some sample questions, which are going to exercise our test-taking abilities and revisit the Council of Elrond, do we have any questions in the audience? All right, let's keep moving then. We got a lot of questions. Let's give it a shot. And you feel free to write your answers in. There's a bit of a delay, and so I'm just going to kind of play along with the audience here. But so remember this question about the Council of Elrond, and we got all the characters from Lord of the Rings. And if you're not a big Lord of the Rings fan, I got other questions for you, I promise. First off, you must choose someone present, so that rules out Smeagol. Smeagol was not at the Council of Elrond. That someone present thing was a weird distractor thrown in there, right? It's tricky because, of course, he is twisted and consumed by the evil of the One Ring. But test questions must not use industry knowledge or assumptions or best practices. The wrong answers have to be 100% wrong. In this case, Smeagol was not present at the Council of Elrond. Also, Boromir is pretty much planning all along to get the ring back to Gondor to help his kingdom. So got to rule that one out. And then Gandalf the Grey already owns Narya, the Ring of Fire, one of the 3 rings of power made for the elves. And everybody knows that. So it has to be Frodo Baggins. That's how we were able to eliminate the other questions, because they were all 100% wrong. So new question. Question 2. I got one about sports. So now everybody's happy. I've got Lord of the Rings and sports. That's got to be like a Venn diagram covering the entire audience, right? Maybe not. You're the athletic director of a university. The dean has instructed you to grow the athletics program. You must choose a new varsity sport that uses spherical balls. The sport must be able to sell tickets in the university's outdoor grass turf venue to anyone. You need to choose a new sport program. Which sport do you choose? So right away, there's a couple things thrown out there that are kind of odd, right? So the whole spherical balls thing, which rules out American football, of course. And I've given this presentation to an international audience, so there's a whole bunch of things in here that, you know, assuming that I'm not saying football and meaning what we call soccer. So what's next? So grass turf. You can't play basketball on grass. I think we all know that. So now we're stuck between baseball and Quidditch. And I told you this was a sports question, but I lied. It's actually a Harry Potter question, because you cannot sell tickets to Quidditch to anyone. You can only sell it to wizards. Muggles cannot see Quidditch, the game where you ride around on the brooms in Harry Potter. And so baseball, by process of elimination, is the perfect sport for our new university sport program. Okay, I promise I'll have questions for everybody in there. Okay, you are the real operator of a local cinema. You must prepare a private showing of a film for a corporate event. The film must be a science fiction film featuring both aliens and androids. You must not choose a film that features any raccoons. You need to choose a film for the screening. Which do you choose? So right away, we've got some details in there, and you're thinking to yourself, let's work through them. No androids in Interstellar, just humans and then the robots and stuff, but no androids in Interstellar. So it can rule that out. Aliens rules out Blade Runner and Interstellar, actually. So now we're down to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Aliens, which obviously features aliens. And of course, raccoons rules out Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Probably the best acted character in that whole movie, for example, was the computer-generated raccoon. And so there we are with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 being, by process of elimination, eliminated, and we're down to aliens as our correct answer. All right, moving along. Feel free to chime in at any point of the questions, and then we'll stop again for questions at the very end. You're the bartender of a local fine dining establishment. You are instructed to serve an appropriate spirit to a diner. All right, if I haven't got you with Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or movies, I've got you with alcohol. I've got everybody covered now. Your establishment only serves whiskeys aged in American oak barrels. The diner has requested a malt whiskey from outside of Tennessee. The malt must not contain corn. Well, that's a weird one. You got to eliminate something like that. You need to choose a spirit. So right away, think about it. So malt whiskey implies a malt of grains, and cognac's made from grapes. So we can rule out cognac's not a malt whiskey. And then outside of Tennessee, well, that's an easy one. Tennessee whiskey actually must be made in Tennessee, unlike bourbon, which can be made anywhere. It doesn't have to be made in Bourbon County, Kentucky. The malt must not contain corn. Well, that rules out bourbon, which by trade law must be 51% corn. So Scotch whiskey. But wait, didn't we say American oak barrels? In fact, all of Scotch whiskey is aged in used American oak barrels. In fact, many Scotch distilleries in Scotland have their own private forests in America. There we go. We are Scotch whiskey, no E, and that is the superior spirit anyway. All right, you are the social media director for a cool, hip company. Your new marketing campaign must choose a social media platform. The platform must be persistent online forever. The grandmother and crazy uncle of the CEO must not be aware of the platform. The platform must currently ban political ads. You need to choose a social media platform. Which platform do you choose? So I think the first one that comes to mind for folks, especially folks with kids, is the persistent online forever thing. Well, that rules out Snapchat. And then you're thinking of both your grandmother and your crazy uncle, or, you know, whatever it is closest that you have. And you know that that must rule out Facebook, and that is correct, right? So now we're back to Twitter and Instagram and must currently ban political ads. Facebook owns Instagram, has not banned political ads. Twitter did ban all political ads back in October of last year, although Facebook and Facebook-owned Instagram have suggested they will only ban ads during the week before the election. So Twitter is our correct answer here. All right, so question number 6. You are an astronaut looking to land on a planet in this solar system. Your new space base requires a solid surface. Your space base is equipped with a moonroof. That's pretty cool. You need to choose a location for your new space base. Which planet do you choose? All right. I think one of these is really easy to rule out. And I think you know just what I mean, Space City. Pluto's not a planet, so we can rule that out right away. Solid surface rules out Jupiter, a gas giant. Your space base must be equipped with a moon roof. Now, of these planets, which ones have moons? Venus has no moons. Mars has moons. The correct answer is Mars, but really, trick question. The only habitable planet is Earth. You need to take care of it. Mars is the correct answer for this question, though. All right, one more question, then we'll go to questions, and it looks like we'll actually end a little early. You used to a lot more feedback. These online presentations, still adjusting my timing to them. Question 7. You are an admiral in Starfleet. Now I've got everybody in the whole fandom gamut, right? Your new flagship needs a captain. You may choose any out of the ranks of captains throughout time. It must be one of those time travel episodes. They're the worst. The captain must have never willingly cooperated with the Borg. That's interesting. Because of the long voyage, the captain must have no children left behind. The new captain must have a superior hairstyle, and if you can see my webcam, you might have a hint of that last one. You need to choose a leader for your starship. Which captain do you choose? So let's go down the list here. Never willingly cooperated with the Borg. Well, that's an interesting detail. That rules out Janeway, because in an episode of Voyager, she has to make a deal with the devil against something even worse than the Borg. Must have no children to leave behind. That rules out Sisko, because Sisko's son prominently featured in the series Deep Space Nine. And then we're down to Kirk and Picard, the old conundrum for Star Trek fans. And the superior hairstyle thing clearly rules out Kirk, meaning that Picard is the leader for our new starship. Congratulations, everyone. I'm sure you got all of those correct. Some helpful links that I always put at the end of my presentations to talk about anything that was useful to me in making this presentation that might also be useful to you. Here's some books I wrote for Microsoft. Last one came out in March, right before the world lit on fire. And it's been out for a while about SQL Server. If you're into SQL Server administration, I highly recommend it. Please support your local STEM initiatives. Here's a STEM education nonprofit local to me that I volunteer for called the Futures Fund in Baton Rouge. Please reach out and share your knowledge with the next generation, especially with folks in your community that are needing to find new careers during the pandemic. And without any more ado, we'll open it back up to questions. Any from the audience? I'll hang out for a few minutes and then I'm going to go grab some more breakfast. But if anybody has any other questions about certification exams, certifications, how to study, anything like that, more than happy to field any of those questions.
Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, William, for sharing. Boy, is space base fun to say.
Space base.
I did love hearing that. So William's hanging out for questions. The recording for the session today will be available at houstontechfest.com soon. We hope that you guys will enjoy the rest of Virtual Houston Tech Fest. William, are you going to post your slide deck online anywhere?
Yes.
Share it
Yeah,
online?
so my blog right here, SQLtech.com. I'll have the slide deck for all my presentations today posted there by the end of the day.
Excellent. We do have a question from the audience. Siva Ram is asking how
can we approach? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Siva, reach out on LinkedIn. My wife actually does kind of this stuff for a living, and I'm more than happy to help. I'll be sure to look for your invitation. Feel free to chat there. And also, my wife, Christine Asif, has a bunch of presentations on, or at least one presentation on job seeking today, and some other stuff that is non-technical, but a good add to a technical conference. Check out her presentations as well.
We have some more questions flowing in.
Go ahead.
What exams would you recommend for the folks straight out of college, entry-level folks?
Great question. I'm glad somebody asked that because I didn't have time to work it in the presentation. Well, apparently I did have time. But in the Microsoft world, the new exams that end in 900, these are called fundamentals level exams, and they're intended for entry-level folks with no technical background, but a preparation of the materials, and students. So AZ 900, for example, is a fantastic exam for everybody. Everybody at any IT company who works in Azure, seriously, should take AZ 900 because it tests you really on what features are around, how things work, especially from a high availability and disaster recovery standpoint, but not in too much technical detail. Well, you'll be swamped if you're not in that field as a sysadmin, for example. So AZ 900 is a great place to start in the Microsoft stack to get into Azure. And then DP 900 for anybody in the data platform. So data platform 900 fundamentals tests all the different data platforms. So relational, non-relational, SQL and non-SQL platforms. From a very lightweight technical standpoint for DP 900. And then if you're into artificial intelligence and machine learning, I believe there's an AI 900 or an ML 900. I forget what letters it are. But basically for students, even if you're a veteran of IT and you've got 2 decades into IT, but you're getting into Azure, the 900 series exams are where I would start for sure. You get one of those under your belt. You don't get any badges, you don't get any like certifications or letters after your name for passing the 900, but it's a really good start. Then you can get into a more channel specific or role specific technology exam in Azure. I'm not as familiar with the other technology platforms outside of Microsoft. That's where I do all my consulting. That's where I have all my expertise, but I am sure there are fundamental level exams out there. And most of them are pretty inexpensive. Like the Microsoft ones are $99. I wouldn't, if it's more than that, it's probably not a fundamentals exam in any one of the other platforms or stacks. Great question, though. Glad you asked. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, everybody have a great rest of your Houston Tech Fest. I think the next sessions start up at 10:10 a.m. All right. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you around.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, William.